Okay, everybody, we're back. Today we are joined by Lance Cayko, who is a serial entrepreneur, architect, builder, lecturer, and podcaster, co-founding F9 Productions Incorporated, a top design and build firm in Longmont, Colorado, known for innovative residential and commercial projects. With degrees in building construction technology, environmental design, and a Master of Architecture from North Dakota State University, Lance combines hands-on construction experience with academic expertise. Beyond his professional work, he teaches at the University of Colorado Boulder, raises his daughter, hosts the Inside the Firm podcast, and founded Longmont Community Gardens, a nonprofit promoting urban sustainability. He's also a professional fisherman and philanthropist. Lance, great to have you in the studio today. How are you?
Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually a psycho, believe it or not. My last name is pronounced Psycho. It's no joke. So now nobody forgets who's listening to this show. They're like, oh, Lance Psycho, but it's spelled Cayko.
It's Lance Cayko. All right. It's not Cayko.
There's only two people. There's only two people in the whole world that have ever got it right. One was an Indian telemarketer out of all people. Like, the spam calls and stuff. Yeah, I honestly can't even remember the last one. So
okay.
Oh, good. Maybe it was my icebreaker for you guys.
That's amazing. Well, what's your heritage in? What's the name back to? Where do you host come from? I guess in the family.
It was pronounced. Yeah, it was pronounced Cayko and spelled differently, right? It was pronounced Cayko, and then when Yugoslavians came over, then they tried to Americanize it into Psycho, and this was their version of Americanizing it. So yeah.
Okay. So Psycho, but it was Cayko. Okay. Very good to know. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that is pretty cool. Oh, gosh. All right. So real quick, Lance, before we jump into some more on some of our topics today, I want to just run off with some icebreakers here and love to start off with, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who and why?
And they have to be historical. They can't be present, huh?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a caveat as not currently alive. That will be my, So someone who has passed on.
Probably Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had a guest on recently who had Teddy Roosevelt glasses, and we were talking, like that was his big historical guy too. So Teddy's getting a couple shout outs now.
Yeah, I'm from North Dakota originally, as you said in the bio there. And like that's, I mean, he's like, the only president to come from there, and there's Teddy Roosevelt National Park, and now it's just all over the West. I'm a Western boy, so I would just want to pick his brain.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he's a fascinating individual. So
he got shot and then said a speech. He was amazing.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So true.
That's great. All right. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
Oh my gosh, I have a go-to karaoke song. Depends on the mood, because I listen to so many different genres of music. I think at any given time it would probably be, I can't even think of the song by Brand New, that like emo punk band from Philly. One of their songs. I don't remember which one it is, but it would be one of theirs.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
That's
very
cool.
Good. And the last one for me, unless Eric, if you got any, you could throw it in too. What's a global problem? If you could solve any one global problem, what do you think it would be?
Oh, just fiat currency. If we could get back to sound money, that would be a good one.
I like that.
Whether that's backed by Bitcoin or gold or something, but like the money's just totally fake and it's a problem.
Just not something that's in the ether, just kind of bouncing around. Yeah. Very good. Okay. I love it. All right. So Lance, I've been really excited to talk with you. You have a very unique set of background here. So you've done a lot of stuff in architecture and build and design, and this is just not someone that I get to speak with regularly. So I would love for you to give me a little bit of an idea of how you got into architecture first, like why that? And I mean, obviously you're doing a lot of things now. We'll get into some kind of specifics on that, but just broadly speaking, why architecture? Is this something you've always wanted to do since younger ages, or what brought you to this point?
Yeah, the big broad brush stroke story is that I actually wanted to be a builder first. I wanted to build. I wanted to build things because like the first person I worked for besides my dad and my grandpa on the farm was his best friend Bruce, and his best friend was a general contractor. I actually quit working for Dad after trying to do it for 1 week. We just didn't get along and all that other good stuff. And I just loved, like, as soon as I started working with Bruce, I was like the laborer, where you just run around and pick up garbage. But like I was such a good laborer that he let me get up on the roof and learn how to roof at like 13. And as hard of work as that is, you felt so accomplished, just like taking the whole roof off and then putting the roof back on and learning all the things. I liked that it was hard work too, because I was like a little scrawny guy and I wanted to get bigger. So I was able to get a little bit bigger and stronger and stuff like that. And about middle of the summer, I asked Bruce, I go, how do I become what you do? And he goes, next year you can't work for me. And I go, what? And he's like, well, if you want to be like me, then you have to go work a different trade. Like, you're gonna have to learn framing and concrete and all this other stuff. So that's what I did. Like, I believed him, And so I did that all the way up until 21. And like the bio said, then I went to building construction technology and all that. I had no intention of being an architect, honestly.
Okay.
Until my sophomore year at the tech school, we got to our capstone project and we got to see blueprints for the first time. And I'm old enough to where they were blueprints and not just, CAD drawings printed off on the computer. And I was like asking all these questions. I saw all of a sudden all these questions came to my mind, like, why did the architect do it this way? And then a light bulb went off, and it went, oh my goodness, like, I'm actually like good at school now, and I like school because I got to pick what I wanted to do, and I figured out how to like monetize it because I was getting all these scholarships and stuff. And I was like, oh, what if I became an architect first? If I became an architect first, the architects get the clients first.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I could sales funnel them into build, like, and then I could be their builder. It'd just be a layup for them. Like, it's gonna be, I would be the easy button. Yeah. So I applied to North Dakota State, and that's actually why I initially wanted to be an architect. But then after I went to architecture school and through it, it was easily one of the most fulfilling personal like things I've ever done in my life. I like, one of my professors had to talk me out of continuing to go to school after my master's because I got recruited by MIT. And I could have went for my PhD. Like, my wife at the time would have been, she could have got like a job at MIT, and like our son could have went to MIT daycare. It was a stipend, and it's like to turn that down.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's sort of the broad brushstroke.
Okay, so this is interesting. So you have the academia experience, right? You're doing this, and you still have the option to go to a very prestigious university here, and you seem to make sort of an entrepreneurial move to not go and pursue your PhD, right? So you kind of, at least from what I'm picking up on, you've got a blend of both things at once. You're like got this interest in being scholastic and furthering your skill and intelligence in that area, but also still that entrepreneur like, this is probably the next step, but I'm actually going to go do this and start my own thing. A little bit of stubbornness worked in there, maybe. So that's cool. So walk me through. So you're saying that you kind of have this builder first approach to architecture, right? Because you've done that. And so you're telling me that originally, in most cases, the architecture and the builder, those are going to be separate fields. And so where you're able to do, and I'm guessing through F9, you're basically bringing that all under one roof, right? And offering that as a seamless experience. And I can imagine, I can think of what would seemingly be pretty obvious plus signs for that. But tell me what you're doing there that's specific and better than what people are going to generally experience if they're going to an architecture firm and then getting a builder, and where that breakdown might be.
Well, everybody's probably heard this phrase, that even if they haven't built anything, and it's the phrase change orders, and that's like the big bad word, right? And the big, because if you're just purely a general contractor, like, you want that to happen. You actually want change orders to happen, because you then get to charge more money, and you get to add into the service and everything. You get to add just to like what your percentage of on that change order, right? And just tack on all those extra fees and everything like that. We avoid most change orders. We avoid most change orders because there's still some that happen, but I would say the ones that we reduce drastically by maybe a magnitude of like 90%, I don't know, of a very a big percentage, is the ones where it's like the architect made a mistake, or the engineer made a mistake, because like I am that. So my architects get feedback directly from like our construction superintendents and myself, and then we redline on top of the architecture drawings that we produced, right? But we're like shifting our brains over to the construction side of things and trying to predict things ahead of time and like really thinking like builders, because all of a sudden like we're looking at the drawings and going like, well, how would we build it? Like how would we actually build it, right? So it's a sort of it's like another catch for ourselves, or like a standard level that we're like excelling to in that kind of a way. That's I'd say the biggest thing. And then there's been a couple instances where like people have approached us to do both things at once, right? The design plus build. And one of the best stories of that is on our website. They're called the Titan Tiny Homes, and Subaru actually was our client for that. So
nice.
first tiny homes that we designed and built it was called the Atlas Tiny Home, and we were on HGTV. It was super fun. This was like 2013, 2014. Like if you look up Alex and Lance's amazing foldable tiny house, you'll find the episode.
No way. That's cool.
It's pretty cool. And my kids were on it. They've been on, this is all fun. But it was so popular of a tiny house because it was so different. It literally folded and stuff, and it was super modern. And nobody else was doing that back then. We had a lot of copycats, and I'm flattered by it. But Subaru saw it, and they were like, "Oh, if we could get these guys, they could make 2 more of these for us." And they actually came to us, and they were humble, and they go, "We have a shop where we build things, but we can't do what you can do. Like, we really think you're kind of the only entity that can do this."
Wow.
And so that's probably the other big thing too, is I really think that we can build and engineer things and design things that a lot of other contractors would just say no to. Because it's maybe too difficult, or stuff like that. Even the building that I'm sitting in now, this was part of we actually wore all 3 hats: architect, builder, real estate developer. And then we retained 3 of the units. It's a 9-unit development, one of which is our commercial building. And there's stuff on these buildings where I'm like, I made it easy for the framers because I was the architect too, but also the builder. Yeah.
So is it, you'll just have to forgive me if this is a silly question, but I'm curious if is architecture largely a bit more design oriented than where you look at obviously the building and construction is much, much more engineering. I'm assuming all architecture, requires some engineering expertise, right? I'm sure not just drawing stuff out of thin air and saying, hey, go do this. But would that be at least something of a approximation of some of the different camps there? Is one is like kind of casting, this is what we can do within some framework, and then on an engineering front, you're actually playing that out through building the facility itself, and then the change orders and all the stuff you mentioned, or would you categorize them a little differently?
I think you're close, actually. I think you're real close. The way I've always liked to describe it is like, and this is when I start being the professor again, and then teaching. Like I'll tell students, I'll go, hey, architecture is half and half. It's half science, it's half art. If you guys. No, that's why you were so close with your framework, is like, okay, if architecture is half science, half art, the problem with a lot of architects is they get too far on the art side, right? Okay. If they go if they don't have a good balance with it. And I think that's one of the things that we always try to keep in mind when we're just architects. Like we even with our architecture clients, my business partner has coined this little phrase that he'll tell people that I've adopted from him. And he's like, no matter what, if we don't build for you, we'll always bring our building expertise into your drawings, but we're your architects first.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. So it's funny because kind of in a similar way, when my dad was a builder, he would build homes through Southern Indiana. He had a friend that would finance. Dad would build most of it. He subcontracted very, very little, except for code on like plumbing and electricity. He really liked to do stuff himself because his standards were really, really high. And my brother and I both, my brother's 10 years my senior, at different times in our childhood, we go and work with him on a site for a few days, and we're just, neither of us enjoy doing it at all. We both got out. Yeah. And I look back later, I'm like, I kind of wish I'd stuck around a little bit because there's a lot of valuable stuff to learn in that front, just from a basic handyman perspective. That I just, as a kid, I was just like, I hate this so much. My brother actually, I think, got himself shot with a nail gun a couple times, and he had a much more severe experience than I did. So walk us through, you said change orders. This is funny too, because I've had my own instances where I've gone into big builds. Some of my clients and my cleaning company are builders, and I've seen a ridiculous change order for a 22,000 square foot house that was super late. It was started in 2006. They moved in 2012 just because of Oh yeah, just because of change orders all the time. So I was just curious when you talk about like not having to do as many of those except for architecture related. In your part, if you make a mistake, are there other tools that you have used? So I've heard of people. I have a friend who's got this facility where they take the plans from the architecture, like they can actually put them out in scale on the floor, like project them on the floor
Oh,
and then up on the wall so they can kind of see and like do all that stuff in real time a lot before building phase. So I'm just curious from a tool and software perspective, what things look like now for you guys and how much you're able to leverage in that department that, maybe it looked different back in like, the 20th century when a lot of this stuff was just on paper, right? And is there just a lot of fun stuff you can do in that department to play around with, or is
it's
that what's that
yeah.
like?
No. It's just we're on the edge of all that. Like really becoming more mainstream for sure. Just
Yeah,
more ubiquitous is the word I'd actually use. The more ubiquitous, more commonly used in the industry. And it's honestly once the boomers go away and I'm Gen X,
okay, yep,
and you know like a young Gen X, like on the verge of millennial. But so I feel like when our generation gets to finally take over, that's when we're going to see the leaps and bounds forward with exactly that kind of software that you're talking about. Where I know I've seen it too, where they laser project all of the like where you're going to lay the walls and chalk the
right,
walls out. Because still to this day, right now, we are still chalking lines in dirt.
sure,
There's something about it that's really primal that I still just really speaks to my soul. We're building $2-3 million homes right now,
mm-hmm.
and the one of the ones that we're building, I have this beautiful photograph of a chalk line in dirt, and I bring it up actually to students and my architects that they're still under my training and everything and under my direction. And I go like, you guys don't ever lose sight of this. Like, this is
Mm.
what it is. Is
Yeah,
like that's when your lines become reality. But anyway, but not to get pontificate too
yeah,
much on that. Some of the things that we've done is like we'll bring laptops to job sites
okay,
and actually pull dimensions and just give people, even myself, real time shop drawings. I think that's the thing is it's just more fluid too when you do the design plus build part of it. I mean, when we built those second set of tiny homes for Subaru, I had my laptop on site all the time, and I was making for myself real-time shop drawings and cuts based off of the model, and that's why we were able to do such a sophisticated piece of engineering and architecture that could collapse and fold on itself. I mean, the decks would fold up, the awnings would fold down, and then we had
that's so cool.
these decks on top that would also fold up and down with railings that would fold up and down that they could put rock bands on there because they use these tiny houses to like they put on this thing called Winterfest. So when winter comes around in Colorado, then they would go to around all the ski resorts and set these up, and like that was their advertising for Subaru, and they'd do the
Okay,
swag bags and stuff.
nice.
But they would entertain and have like hot cocoa and then like rock bands on top and stuff like that.
That's
So I
cool.
think that's some of the stuff we're doing. Then one thing I do want to touch base on this note
Yeah.
too is that I know for a fact because it just keeps coming up. I got this awesome email over Christmas from a former client who had us design brewery out east of where we operate here in North
Mm-hmm.
Denver, and the brewery never got built. But the clients loved us. We love them. They're just really good people. And they reached out to me and they go, "Hey, you're not going to believe it, but we're going to start 3D printing homes." And I go with concrete, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like because I really pride myself, and my fiance is just shocked as she's gotten to know me over the last year. She's an architect too. She comes from the healthcare world, right? As an architect, that's just very corporate, huge, giant behemoth firms. Things are moving slow. You're not doing edgy stuff, and now she's like engaged to this on the opposite end of it, like in the private sector, small firm, nimble, doing edgy stuff. And some of the typologies that I've been really blessed to build with is like and design with is like we're on our second straw bale home right now that we're hopefully going to turn into a design build project. We've done a couple shipping container houses. We've done
Hmm.
like SIPS panels houses, which are just like sandwich panels and it's sort of prefabricated and stuff like that. And then this latest one is like 3D printing concrete.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
I'm
how does that work? And do you utilize AI at all in doing that?
I don't know about the AI part of it, but I will tell you here's how it works is like they are taking our drawings, like Aaron was saying, and like now we're feeding them into a machine that spits out and prints the building in sections.
That's
Is it
which is
like
crazy.
pretty.
Cat? Like in Cat, can you just feed it the straight, like the 3D version, and it just prints the just like that?
Yep, just like CNC.
Wow.
It's like CNC when you were CNC. I would say or laser jets. The water jets or whatever. That was probably like that's a version of it for sure, where you're just feeding it that drawing, and then
Yeah.
it starts doing it, right. Which is different because what it does, that's taking out like the human error. That's taking out one of the human errors. Like the drawings should still have errors from me or my art staffs and everything like that. But it's taking out sort of that interpretive, that third party person who's going to interpret the drawings and then chalk the lines on the dirt.
Okay.
Wow.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
So,
So go ahead.
um,
No.
so you decided to start your own firm versus trying to do it in the corporate world. Was that mainly because your wife had come from the corporate world and you already had a glimpse of that?
No, actually, it was that's a whole different thing. She's just I'm going to marry her in like 3 months. So
Okay, congratulations.
thank you.
close.
Yeah. That was a former wife, actually, first wife when I first started the firm.
Gotcha.
We started the firm because when we got laid off during the Great Recession in 2009, 50% of the architects, engineers, and contractors in the the whole building sector was laid off. It was more devastating than
Wow.
the last tech recession. Like the last tech recession that we saw after COVID was 20%.
Yeah.
50% of the right. And so there was no jobs. I mean, there was nothing because the financing was completely screwed because of the all the speculative real estate that occurred. Like
Sure.
if you ever watched The Big Short, right, on
Yep.
Netflix or whatever. So I had when I was we were down here in Colorado. I'd only been at that first job for 9 months. I got like one of the last internships in Colorado. And then I got laid off. And when my first wife and I interviewed down here in Colorado, we left before I got the job. When we left Fargo, North Dakota, it was to do the interviews. It was -70 below with the windshield. It was insane, right?
Ow.
Like
No.
literally today, it's 50 below actually because my family, so it never stops. And I got down here and it was 70 above in March, and I was like,
Yeah.
and we stayed with my aunt in Lyons, Colorado, which is a town about west of me, about 7 miles, and right in the foothills. And I go,
Yeah.
why didn't you guys tell us about this? And they go, that's the secret. So
This exists?
yeah. So I was like, so when I got laid off, I was like, I'll do
Jeez.
whatever it takes to not move back to North Dakota. I love North Dakota. It's dear to my heart.
Yep.
But I'm truly a mountain boy, and I like matter of fact, like when I got on the plane to come to Denver just yesterday from visiting Jennifer, it was the pilot goes, he goes, well, ladies and gents, I have some good news for you. We're about to leave the icebox for the refrigerator, because that's the way I describe like the weather down here. Like we still get winter, obviously, but it's a refrigerator compared to an icebox. So I had no choice but to start the architecture firm.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I felt as if like, first of all, like I have no choice, but second of all, I never want to be a victim like that again. Like I just hated the fact that I was subject to crappy business owners. And that's why I actually was laid off, is because they were just awful business owners. Those guys were a good example of too much art, not enough business, and too much art, not enough science behind it. So that's really why we started the firm. And I try to preach that all day long to people who have, that's why we have a show. That's why we have Inside the Firm podcast, and why we started it. Because I wanted to like just be a beacon of light for like Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, is like, you can do it too. And if you ever get laid off and put in that position, it hurts. You don't ever want to feel like that again. So here's how you can not feel like that again.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. What can you tell me a little bit? Whenever I talk to someone who I would kind of describe you as some degree of creative, right? Because you're talking to someone and bringing their life. What is communication? How does that look like when you are talking to somebody who wants to build, right? Whether it's, especially on the residential front, you got someone who wants to build a home and they've got an idea, right? Well, I want it to look like this. And maybe, do you have to hedge that a little bit and kind of bring things down? What does that look like for you to get something that's going to make the client happy? How often are you working with their expectations to manage that and help them know what is actually attainable? Is it all strictly budget related? Are there other factors? Like how does that play out?
It's what the biggest, there's a couple struggles that we have to go through with him. It's sort of like a struggle session. Like it's like a Maoist struggle session, but in the private sector.
That's great.
Because like they'll have their ideas, right? And sometimes they'll come to us and obviously like they're really bad. They're really bad. But like people are attached to them emotionally. So I have to, these people are like feeding me essentially and feeding my children and feeding my employees and their children and all that other stuff. So like that's our lifeblood. So I've really taken it upon myself to try to be as empathetic as possible and see where they're coming from. And maybe there's some emotions behind some of their thoughts. And like, because some people come to us and they're so adverse to certain things because they just grew up in a certain way in a certain house or a certain building. And they just can't ever do that again. Right.
Yeah.
And so what we find ourselves doing a lot is entertaining bad ideas, showing them to that in their first meeting and go, hey, I think it kind of worked, but you can see the problems with it in reality. And here's our version on top of your thoughts. And once then they have felt heard, and they should feel heard. Then after that, then we've pretty much gained their trust, and the relationship goes really well after that. And then all of a sudden we can be their trusted leader, their trusted advisor, and we're holding their hands, through it in a happy way and all of that. Yeah. I have experimented in the opposite just a few times where we're like, we don't even entertain their idea. And boy, does that become like half the project, half the timeline of the project. Let's say it takes 3 months to do their building or their house or whatever. Half the first half is just awful, and like we're in this contractual marriage and it's just awful. And then eventually it gets better, because we work through all of that stuff. So there's that part of it. And the other tricky part is, not everybody. Most people have a budget. And I think people have been so burned by the construction industry and bad contractors, and even architects, like over-promising what can get built for X amount of dollars, that a lot of people will still come to us and they will like kind of lie about their budget, thinking that somehow we're going to be able to do some magic behind the scenes to still like meet this fictitious budget, only to find out six months later or something, and they're like, just kidding, our budget's like $2 million. It's not $1 million. And we're like, what the hell? Like, so yeah.
So you almost have like a mini, what you call like a mini therapy session on the front end of some of these.
And then we're always feeling out the couples too, whether it's like a traditional male female couple, or a male or a female. It's like you're trying to understand who's the leader, who's the alpha, who's the beta, are they both alphas, and that's tricky too. And then there's all the questions about like, how do you prefer to communicate? Email, phone call, text. Some people just cannot email. Some people just have to text. Some people just have to do phone calls. Some people can never reply all if we need them to reply all. But it's fun. What I like to tell everybody in both firms is like, we are happy warriors. We are happy warriors taking the arrows, and that's what we do.
That's too funny. I hadn't really considered that, but you think about all the relationship dynamics that would go into something. This is so significant, right? You're not just buying a car, you're like building a freaking house. Like, this is pretty intense. And then to not know who's, kind of calling the shots and who needs to run it through and like what their decision-making process is, that would be a whole lot to munch through.
And none of this is taught in architecture school. None of it. Because it can't be, actually.
So I'm curious, so is that part of the reason why you like to work also as a lecturer, right? So you're still in the scholastic side. Are you able to kind of impart some of this like boots on the ground wisdom? It's like, by the way, no one else is going to tell you this. You need to go do a quick psychology course, maybe a counseling course. Like, what are you sharing there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just had this conversation with my fiance because she's an academic too. She teaches and she practices. Like, we're one and the same in that kind of way. And I'll tell her she just gotten back into practice. Like, I've only been practicing for 15 years and then adjuncting second, right? In the academic world. And so the example I gave her from this, or the story I was telling her about this last weekend, was she was telling me about a student who would not put a window at the end of this corridor the whole semester. And she would just, every time she'd go over to her desk crit, she's like, Avina, why don't you put in this window? And Avina wouldn't do it. And I go, do you know what I would tell? I go, Jen, do you know what I would tell my students or what I have told them when they refuse to do that? Because I'm not like dictating, like, and you have to do it. It's just like,
Yeah,
why don't you do it? Like, you should do this. This is a good idea. Is I tell my students, I'm like, I'm going to keep suggesting it, but guess what happens when you get into practice? Even if I was your boss and I told you to do it, guess who's actually going to tell you to do it? And you have to do it. I go, the client's going to do that. So, I'm trying, and once I phrase it like that, they go, all right, I'll put it in the window.
Good for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And there's
kind of
nothing
like
you can do about it then.
is that kind of the approach that you would recommend, is putting yourself in your client's shoes?
Yeah.
And design that way instead of design how creative you would want to be?
It's
Like,
actually
is
a
this
mix.
practical? Does this functional?
Yeah, it's got to be a mix. It's got to be a mix of that. The best projects are like 50-50 of that for sure. And the best projects, like where the client will push, they'll like push for like high design or good design, and they really care about it and they're invested in it. And because we're already invested in it and we want to be equally invested in it. But then Eric, there are those ones exactly where they're like, look, they even like, they'll be humble about it, sometimes, and they'll like, let's say it's two software engineers, like autistic software engineers. So where they, like Elon Musk, right? Like where you're like, oh my gosh, this person, like they have no creative bone whatsoever, but they at least admit it. And then they'll say like, look, we are not creatives. We know you are, and that's why you're hiring you. And they'll come up with, and maybe their only real big set of input will be, they'll send us like, they'll list out by floor, like upper floor, we want these kind of spaces, middle floor, this space is basement, whatever. And then they go, run with it. Like, we trust you. And those ones, yes, then we are 100%, Eric, trying to really be as empathetic as we can and really pretend like we're them and get to know them and understand them so we can fulfill that. And those ones too are really special, for sure.
Is that
the bad ones?
what you would...
The bad ones are the ones where we're actually dictated to mostly. So, because there's a third option there.
Okay.
What would be
Makes sense.
what would be your most rewarding project in terms of like the ones where you can just be free and creative as much as you want? Do you have a good example on that? Like, what's your most rewarding project?
I'd say 10% client, 90% us. But the 10% is so good from them, and it usually will occur right at the beginning with good direction and a thought, succinct, just kind of aesthetics in place that are still gooey to where we can move in certain directions as the design flows. And then where they just trust us, where they just go like, so a really good example would that be, we have this house series that we do. It's called the Eastwatch series. It's mid-century modern prairie style residential architecture, but in the mountains.
I love that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and it uses like Colorado materials. So there are actually vernacular Colorado materials a lot, and one of the biggest ones is like rusted metal on all of these old mining shacks and stuff all throughout like Idaho Springs and the mountains and stuff like that. And there's even a company called Reclametals that takes all the old mining materials or whatever and turns it into new steel, and then you can make it rusted. It just looks amazing, right? And you contrast that with glass and steel. It looks so good. But that client, the Eastwatch client, that's what they did. It was 10% input right at the beginning, and sure, we had input along the way, but they trusted me. I mean, I told Noah when we did his house, it was like, I think like God picked me to do your house. I took it that seriously. And I do take those commissions. I take to that spiritual level. I go visit the site. I think about the program, the space program they want to do, the style they want to do, and then usually what I like to do is I like to have an incubation period internally for myself. And I'll go. I'm a big, as you said in the bio, like professional fisherman, and go up to the mountains a lot. And so I'll just go like meditate, like while I'm walking and hiking to the fishing lake, and I'm just like trying to like free my mind and get to a good subconscious place. And then after a couple days of that is when it all kind of comes together in my brain, and then it's a flurry of a couple sketches for the concept, and then I'm jumping into our CAD program and starting to do their floor plans and the form exploration. So that's probably the dreamiest kind of project style, or type. So.
Is that the same is that like that ideal of 90-10 split? Is that similar on the commercial front? Do those numbers, the ratios look a little different if you're doing a commercial project because there's more input from the clients? They have harsher restrictions or guidelines, or what's that typically?
Yeah, that one's about 50-50. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
really good observation, I think. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, too. Because we're doing exactly. Like we've done a car dealership. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Because they just have things they have to fit in, right? Whereas a
Sure.
house is still kind of an endless problem to solve, which is good.
Yeah. So on the flip side, to the extent that you can't share, what's like your worst request you've gotten, either commercial or residential? It was like, there's just no way this is going to pan out, and maybe it did pan out. I'm just curious, like, what's a
I
nightmare
have made
story?
I have made this mistake several times, and I'm done making it. And that is, I don't know why I did this last year. Like sometimes I'm like such a bonehead. Everybody is, right? Everybody makes mistakes.
Sure.
But I'm like, why did I do that, Lance? You already learned that lesson. And here's what it is. So it's a scenario, actually. And that's why I can keep this story generic and not point fingers and names and all that. I have made the mistake several times now. And I think last year was the third time in the span of 15 years where I allowed us, the architects, to be contracted by the general contractor and not the owner. And the problem with that is then they treat the white collar architects like blue collar subcontractors, and a lot of subcontractors get really treated like dogs. I'm not one. I'm not a general contractor that does that. I'm friends with my blue collar boys. I'm half and half. You know what I mean? Like I'm very empathetic to the field, and like I'm super grateful for the men that go out and risk their lives every day to freaking keep the toilets flushing. Because it's a real deal. Construction is super dangerous. So that's a scenario I just want to avoid. And like, if any architects are listening, or even general contractors, like that is not a position you want to put yourself in. We're all supposed to be equal, like in the triangle of owner, architect, contractor, and we're supposed to hold ourselves accountable. But all of a sudden, when we're put in the position of sub, it's like it's just not good for everybody.
Interesting. Okay, that's fascinating. Tell me a little bit about your fishing experience. You're noted as a professional fisherman. So, what specifically does that mean? What are you doing at a high level in fishing? What's your go-to situation there?
Well, it's so funny. Like I call myself that, and it's true. Like I get paid to do it. There's a YouTube channel. There's a Newsbreak channel. I have sponsors, people that give us like Icebreaker or Striker Ice. Pays for our ice suits and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, I was going to ask, like, if professional has some qualification there. I didn't know exactly. So it sounds like, you're definitely a professional.
Yeah. And then I'm good at it. Like, I'm good at it. Like, I can go out, I actually, but that doesn't mean I don't hire guides every once in a while.
Sure.
For me, just to do it. As a matter of fact, I was just in Fort Peck, Montana, way north. It's almost by Canada. I took two of my best friends, the Bills, Cameraman Bill, Beetle Bill. And I hired this guide. And we were not catching anything. So we didn't catch anything the first day. Second day, we're still not catching anything. And finally, I turned to him and I go, when I guide people, I put them on hundreds of fish. I'm like, this is. I was just getting real mad at it. But where I got restarted with it was, I have 4 children. I had 4 children. I have 2 stepchildren now, not anymore, but 2 biological children. They're all about the same age, and we're about around like 2020. Kind of when COVID hit too, it was all the kids became teenagers, and then they didn't care about mom and dad anymore at all. Like in terms of like needing them, like they didn't need us anymore as much as they needed it before, and like they wanted to just go hang out with their friends, or they just didn't want anything to do with us. They didn't want to play. They were just like little kids anymore that were more attached. So all of a sudden, my wife and I at the time looked at each other and we were at, oh hi. Well, first of all, hi, and then second of all, it's like, wow, I have a lot of free time. I have a lot of free time now. And like the little boy in me went, remember when you told your mom you want to be a professional fisherman? And I was like, I did. And I'm really like, if you can't tell with all the things I do, like I just can't stop. Like I can't stop like making new things and trying new things. And I don't ever want to, like, I want to do all the things that come up in my head about, professional wise or tangentially professional. So I don't regret it, where I'm like, I tried that. I could say I tried that. Here's how it went, and maybe have a story with it. It just makes me a more well-rounded person, all of that. So I just started fishing incessantly, like 3 days a week. It was kind of a midlife crisis thing too, honestly.
Okay.
Because we had just finished this real estate development, and I was really burnt out. There was a point where I worked 80 days in a row with my tool bags on, like I was pure builder. It was
Nice.
like
Wow.
two stints of 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. It was kind of biblical in that way.
Jeez, yeah.
And I just like, I was like, I gotta quit. I got after we finished development, we sold everything off, and then kept the rentals and stuff. And I was like, I need a break. And so I would go Saturday, I would go Sunday, and then I would go Wednesday. And my hikes consisted of, like, we live, I mean, so beautiful where we live. I'm at the access I have to the Indian Peaks Wilderness, James Peak Wilderness, and Rocky Mountain National Park. It is insane. And there's all these amazing alpine lakes to hike to and creeks. And the hikes would average between 4 to 15 or 16 miles round trip. And, you go from like 9,000 to 12,000 feet, go up to lakes you can just see like 25 feet into the water.
Wow.
Pristine stuff, and then have the whole lake to yourself, because it's just like so hard to get to these places, and they're so remote. So that's what kind of brought me back full circle with it. And actually, when I made my first cent off of like YouTube, I framed it and gave it to my mom for
That's
Mother's
awesome.
Day.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me, Aaron, this is the number one place, like before you die, this is the place you should go fishing once in your life, where would that be? If you could pick 1 or 2 or 3.
Oh, you should just the next time you come to Denver, you should just give me some heads up, and then I would take you up. I would take you to the Indian Peaks Wilderness, and I would put you on a 100 fish day.
Okay.
Because
So
that's
all right,
yeah,
that's
and the species we go after is probably brook trout. So yeah, and then I like to do like a catch and cook. So what I'll do is I'll bring my backpack and stuff, and then I'll prepare like the fresh fish for us on the shore. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm totally game for that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your philanthropic work as well? Shed some light on that.
Yeah, happy to. I graduated, when I graduated college in 2008, I mean, architecture school is very, very, very intense. There's a lot of people take a lot of pride in doing these things called all-nighters. They're just staying up all night, right? Like, I wasn't one of them.
Yep.
I couldn't be, because I had a child in college, and I just had to be very careful with my time. So I became a morning person. And anyway, it was but you still live and breathe in the design studio, and you're just constantly working. It's just so much effort to get really good and stand out. So when we moved to Colorado and we got a little apartment, it was like all of a sudden I was in a regular 40-hour job. I was like, oh, I forgot about all the free time again. And and then I was like, it was an apartment, right? But I wanted to show my children, like, here's how food is grown. Like, it doesn't just come from the grocery store, because I grew up on a farm. I was like, I can't let that stop.
Yeah.
They need to know, like, I don't want to raise those kind of children. I want to make sure that I really understand the whole process. So I just Googled community garden Longmont, and there was a community garden, and there's a bunch of them actually. And I signed up for this one, got a plot, and would bring the kids out there and we do our thing. And then, I just thought in my head, I was like, gosh, it would be really cool if like I could just have if I could make one of these one day. That would be a really good feel good thing. If I end up becoming this business person and being a good capitalist and giving back to the community, and all that stuff. And so the next year I became the garden leader. I was asked to be the garden leader, and then I led that garden until 2020. And then in 2020, the parent nonprofit was Growing Gardens, and they were like, "Hey, one of our goals is, yes, we're trying to like make all these community gardens, but we want to give them back to local control. That is gardening, is local control of your food and everything." And they go, "You've led the garden for 10 years. Like, would you want to take it over entirely?" And I go, "Yeah, like it's always been a dream to have my own nonprofit." So it was a pretty easy transition for that, because I'd already had the business backgrounds. I knew how to do all the paperwork and everything. And then once I got to see behind the scenes, I got to see all the demand, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have a 2-to-1 demand. We should expand. We should expand. So I've spent the last 2 years working on expanding the garden. 2023, we had we submitted for some grants. We needed like 70,000 to expand the gardens, double the sizes. And we struck out on the first try. In the second try, I went for a USDA grant, and I got it last year. It was 86,000, and we Yeah, it was
Nice.
really, it was so much work. It was actually 14,000 words I had to write one weekend.
Oh,
14,000 words. It was intense. That's all I did one weekend in the winter. Wrote
jeez.
it, sent it off, got it, and then now we've expanded, and we're like, all the construction happened last fall, making all the new beds and everything like that. And it's called Longmont Community Gardens. So that's my nonprofit, and what we do is we offer. It's a really good deal. Like, we have these 20 by 20 foot garden plots, 10 by 20s, and then 4 by 8 raised beds, and a variety of them. And the fees are really low. It's like $120 if you want to rent a big one, $80 if you want to rent a medium one, and $40 if you rent a small one. And then if you're low income or disadvantaged, or like a veteran, for example, you get a discount, but all the seeds are free, all the water's free, all the tools are free. It's like an incredible opportunity. It's a super opportunity. Yeah.
Wish there was something like that around here. That would be great.
Yeah. Come start one in Lexington. We'll help you get that up and running. That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's really cool. Good stuff. Well, Lance, I personally have not been out to Colorado yet. I've done a lot in the Midwest, East Coast. I've not thoroughly explored the western side of the country. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there at some point and have you taking us on a fishing trip. So it sounds 100%. Like you're the first person to talk to when I get to Denver. So look forward to doing that and checking out your projects at Longmont Community Gardens as well. I think that would just be really cool to see in person. So
really. Don't be a stranger. I'm serious. I love meeting people this way. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having on the show today. It's been a lot of fun to get to learn about what you're doing in architecture and design and build. And that's just a lot of really interesting stuff that I didn't know much about before talking to someone at your expertise. So thanks for sharing with us today. I'd be curious, just kind of as we close out, do you have anything that you'd really like to share with the broader audience, maybe people that are looking into architecture as a focus, maybe career or as entrepreneurial endeavors? Like, hey, this is something you should be aware of. I maybe didn't know this when I got started, and either through my studies or, working hands-on with these projects that I wish I knew when I was starting out.
Two big things, I think. So there's one of the biggest opportunities ever in America right now, and that is like learning some kind of a trade. Learning some kind of a trade in the building industry is just valuable, not only because you could actually always fall back on that. Like, somebody's always got to paint, somebody's always got to do plumbing, somebody's always got to like build stuff. So just having that always like that, it literally saved me. It saved me, right? Because as soon as I got laid off, I actually put Craigslist ads out and just did handyman work for cash until I could finally start winning architecture clients. And nobody ever starved. We all survived, and we're still here thriving in Colorado. And then, so I think that's one thing is, even if you're going to be an architect, you should go pound nails and do stuff for a couple summers. It's just going to make you a better person. You're going to be more empathetic again to those people that are literally risking their lives to make us have these, nice civilized lives. And the second thing is just keep the faith through the law of polarity. There's going to be bad stuff that happens. But what I've noticed is like the beautiful part about the law of polarity, which is a literal physics, it's a law of physics, is like you can't have, electricity without negatives and positives. You have like, so it's real. Mm-hmm. And what I really love is like if a negative thing happens in my life, there's always something positive that comes out in the back end of it, because it has to. Otherwise we don't live in like a universe that respects, laws of physics. So just when you're in your deepest, darkest places, just always remember that like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And like, diamonds weren't formed just by themselves. They were formed under intense heat and pressure.
Sure. That's good stuff. That's a great closing word. How best would people stay in touch with you? We're going to link inside the firm here, your podcasts on our show as well. What are other best methods for people to stay in touch with you, Lance?
Oh, man, you can go to f9productions.com, sign up for our newsletter if you want to keep up with all our architecture, design, building projects. Longmont Community Gardens, check us out there. And then LinkedIn, I'll link in with anybody. So you go to LinkedIn, you just type in LANCE, last name Cayko, Cayko. There's only one of me. I will link in.
There you go. Awesome. Well, we'll have those all here in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us. It's been an awful lot of fun, and hopefully we'll catch you down the road.